Tonight, we're less than a week away from the midterm elections, and it looks like the Dems are in trouble of losing not just the House, of course, but the Senate as well. Does the party stand a chance at least keeping the status quo? We keep an eye on local and national races across the country. And an issue you haven't heard a lot of this election season, guns. They've taken a virtual backseat this election cycle as lawmakers battle over the hysteria from Ebola concerns and ISIS, etc. However, the gun debate is driving some campaigns in our region, including Connecticut and New York. We'll have a look at the controversial ads that are bringing the discussion back into the spotlight ahead of some Tuesday elections. Plus, Casey Hickok, the nurse who was put in an isolation tent in New Jersey after helping Ebola patients in West Africa, is now in Maine, where the state also wants to keep her quarantined. She says not so fast. She's ready to take her fight to court. We'll hear what our legal panel has to say about that coming up. Good evening and welcome to RFL. I'm Richard French. Thanks so much for joining us. Election 2014, the final week. Well, today, 6 days out from the midterm elections this coming Tuesday, and if the reporting is to be believed, and there's enough seemingly consensus to suggest that it should be, this may be the final week Democrats can really try and keep control of the U.S. Senate. Even left-friendly media jumping on the GOP election bandwagon. Huffington Post headline today is the Senate slipping away. And the numbers suggest it is. Latest election forecast, this from the New York Times, gives the GOP a 2-3 chance of winning the upper chamber of Congress. Even the White House says that, well, they seemingly are resigned to that fate as well. White House political team reportedly working on a game plan for a GOP-controlled House and Senate. They're apparently looking for issues where an all-Republican Congress might actually come in handy as they seek the political leverage to pass anything in the president's final 2 years. And speaking of the president, he has been not so president, not so welcome by many Democrats across the country this election cycle. The president was in Wisconsin yesterday, stumping for gubernatorial hopeful Mary Burke, who trails Republican Scott Walker in the polls. The president being invited to a few gubernatorial events, but he's been shunned by most Senate and even congressional Democrats. And that includes the race in Kentucky, where not only has Democrat Senator candidate Allison Lyon Grimes actually run against President Obama, she got herself all tied up in knots when she was asked a simple question if she, in fact, had voted for him.
Did you vote for President Obama, 2008, 2012?
You know, this election, it isn't about the president. It's about making sure we put Kentuckians back to work.
Did you vote for him?
I was actually in 2008 a delegate for Hillary Clinton, and I think that Kentuckians know I'm a Clinton Democrat through and through.
So you're not going to answer?
Again, I don't think that the president is on the ballot as much as Mitch McConnell might want him to be. It's my name, and it's going to be me who's holding him accountable for the failed decisions and votes that he has made against the people of Kentucky.
All right, let's bring in our panel on this one. Dominic Carter, political journalist and author. Andrew Whitman, senior political correspondent. You saw how tortured that moment was. You know, when you're trying to avoid an answer to a certain point, you answer it whether you want to or not. Let's first guess this, guys, not second guess on Wednesday. Will Democrats regret not wrapping their arms around the president? Because I always seem, in every election cycle, the unpopular guy, it was Bush at a certain point. Republicans can want to run away as much as they wanted from him. At the end, they were tied to him. Isn't there a logic that says you're going to the dance with them whether you like it or not? You might as well embrace the stuff that people like.
Well, that's one way of looking at it, Richard. But candidates like Grimes in Kentucky are fearful that it will result in more damage than good, and that's the bottom line. And so Mitch McConnell, that race has been all about. If you asked him how was his day today, his response was Allison Grimes or candidate Grimes and Barack Obama and President Obama. So the fact of the matter is that Republicans have done a great job of demonizing this president. This president has his share of mistakes, and he's not good on the stunt. I mean, is that simple?
Let me ask you a same first guess question, Andrew. One thing is choosing to campaign or to embrace it, but I personally believe the president's a big boy, and he should take ownership of whether or not he chose to champion or not champion his own causes. Allowing people to label, I mean, something as simple as Obamacare. He let it get called Obamacare, he started calling himself instead of the Affordable Care Act. But will Democrats look back and say, you know what, for good or for bad, he was our party standard bearer. We should have gotten behind him more here so we wouldn't be on defense this whole election cycle. Was it avoidable at all?
There's going to be a lot of regrets, I think, from Democrats after Tuesday, but I agree with Dominic that I think a lot of them say, I just can't appear on stage with him, or I can't say his name in the same sentence too fast. It'll wind up in a campaign ad. It'll wind up as the soundbite of the day. We've talked a lot in the last few weeks about political courage or a lack thereof, and Democrats, I think, historically do not show a lot of political courage when it comes to these kinds of issues, convincing people that you're right, even if you're carrying what at the time is an unpopular argument. I think that'll be a regret for Democrats as well. But I also think that President Obama has done a bad job post-selling most of his agenda. Obamacare is the classic example, as you mentioned. He's great at the sales job. He's great at, let's get the vote, let's get the up or down vote. But then after the vote and after it passes, he's done a terrible job of selling it in retrospect, so that people still look at it suspiciously. It's still not as popular as it is when you break down the individual
you know what's
components.
Funny? They could have said to him on that one issue, I know we got to get to other stuff, okay, you know what, if you're going to come to Kentucky, here's what I want to do. We're going to find you 6 people whose lives the Affordable Care Act changed. 6 people for the first time get health insurance. Wait a second. 6 people who for the first time, their pre-existing condition here, that they're going to get coverage instead of being kicked to the curb, or that the kid stays on mom and dad's policy, or whatever else.
It won't work.
I see.
The commercial that night, first of all, it's not up to the president of whether or not he goes. It's up to the local candidate of whether or not they want the president. And if the president did go to Kentucky, for example, Mitch O'Connell, who apparently will be the Senate Majority Leader after Tuesday, would be licking his chops. The commercial would be up that night, showing Grimes hugging Obama. That's all Kentucky residents would see. It would not work out for him.
They started 5 years ago. I mean, it might have worked if you planted those seeds early enough, but you can't do it at the last minute.
All right, now let's bring this closer to home here. There is no statewide polling to back up the claim, but today, Republican gubernatorial hopeful Rob Astorino, he's telling anybody that'll listen to him that this race for governor of New York is tightening and that it's going to be anybody's game in the final week.
Right now, people are really paying attention. They don't think the state's going in the right direction. His numbers have just fallen, and you just said we were outspent 20-1. So, you know, his numbers have just fallen flat. They've fallen upside down.
Okay, again, I got no evidence to back it up, and he's got no statewide polling to confirm his claims, but there are signs. The governor is playing defense this final week here. First, shifting responses on Ebola, 3 different answers over the course of 20-something hours, and now this. Cuomo scheduled a campaign stop tomorrow with former president and Cuomo's former boss, for that matter, when he was at HUD, Bill Clinton. Kind of event you might see from a governor either looking to run up the score here or trying to like batten down the hatches because the numbers are getting tight. Okay, nobody on this panel thinks that come Wednesday morning, Rob Astorino is going to hold his hand up and say, I'm the next governor of New York. I get it. Let's not waste time on that. But will the public be surprised that this thing's going to be within 15 points, or will the public be surprised that the governor has gotten a spread when it's all said and done that he wins by 25, 30 points?
I don't think the margin of victory for Mr. Cuomo will be under 15 points. And I also believe that President Clinton was going to close this campaign anyway, no matter how strong he was up ahead.
So don't read into it.
Don't read into this. See, this is the way you finish a campaign. Knowing Cuomo, he wants to finish strong. He wants to run like an underdog. That's just the type of person that he is.
And we know at this table, Andrew, there's a lot of agendas going on the event tomorrow. But that said, you buy what he's selling, that this thing's going to be 15 plus, or you think it's going to be tighter?
I'm not so sure. We always knew it was going to tighten. I mean, every election tightens as you get down to the wire. 15 might be the spread. It might be a hair under that. I think it's going to be a low turnout election for Democrats.
Come on, over under. Which one are you taking? The 15 spread.
If you pin me down today, I'd take over. But there's still 6 days left, so there's still a little time left to hone in. Look, I think the race is tightening. I think there is some frustration with Cuomo, and I think it's going to be a very low turnout night for Democrats in New York. And you've got Hawkins, who might actually get towards the upper single digits. It's not a great recipe for a huge blowout win for Cuomo.
Okay, finally, and I'm reminded of the old saying in politics, if you want a friend, get a dog. A pair of New York races now complete with claims of attacks that have gone too far, that unspoken line that they've been crossed. First up, we'll go to Buffalo. where Republican State Senator there, Mark Grisanti, he's crying foul after a teachers union sent out an attack mailer. Now, in this mailer, and take a look for yourself here, shows a woman with a black eye and a bruised face, and the words in the front, Mark Grisanti won't protect her from her abuser. On the back, next to another photo of the woman, are reminders that Grisanti blocked the Women's Equality Act, a 10-point package that included pay equity provisions, stronger protections for victims of domestic abuse. Grisanti, and for that matter, even Democrats, including Governor Cuomo, say this mailer went too far. Again, there's that fine line. You agree? Is Governor right and other Democrats too, let alone Grisanti saying time out? You know, there's one thing with saying I didn't vote for something, but making it sound like I'm the one, you know, slapping this woman around, that's something different.
It does go too far, but this day was coming in terms of the way it used to be done, going back to the Ed Koch's days and so on, is that you wouldn't put your name on it. You would still do exactly the same thing as that ad, but it would be done anonymously.
We're fast this current governor did something in Ed Koch.
And so it's fast approaching a day where groups are putting their stamp on it. So I'm not surprised. It's disgusting, but I'm not surprised.
But it's on topic, and it does. I mean, I don't like the image of the black eye on
Well,
the
that's
woman,
the whole point
but it
of
does indicate that it was protecting. He voted against women's protections, and I think that's fair game.
But the imagery is the part where everyone's got a problem. Not on how he voted or not, but the imagery made it sound, look, when I first heard the ad, I said, oh, are they alleging that he did this? And then obviously you read into it, it's about his voting record. All right, then how about this one, Andrea? This goes to you, the Syracuse area race for Congress. Republican challenger John Katko attacking the incumbent Democrat Dan Maffei here for being too Washington, saying he'll tell you he lives here, but here's the deal. His wife lives and works in D.C. That's where her job is. He just had his first child in D.C. I congratulate him on, but the fact of the matter is the child was born there. He bought a $700,000 house there. He's got a much less expensive house here. And the fact of the matter is he's in D.C. He's a D.C. guy. Now, the Democrat not too happy here. He went on to say he went too far.
Let me make this clear to Mr. Katko or anyone else involved in this campaign. My wife and my daughter are off limits.
Is it a simple rule that unless they're accused of illegality or something else, don't let somebody's wife or kid come out of your mouth? Run against the other person you're running against. Leave the spouse and the baby out of it.
Again, I don't have a big problem with that attack, only because he's trying to show that Maffei is more Washington than he is Syracuse. And I think that's a legitimate point to be made in the final days of a campaign. Again, I don't think that was I understand. I was bringing up the wife and kids, and that's going to touch a nerve.
Richard,
but
the response from the Democrat there basically confirms that he lives in Washington. Basically, he confirmed exactly what the allegation by saying the wife and kid is. He didn't deal with the substance of it.
Okay, which one resonates more with the public? Saying this guy's basically living out of state, or that, hey, wait a minute, lay off my wife and kid? Which does the public care more about?
It depends on
I think
the
he had a
individual.
good job of spinning that at the end there.
Well, but it was an empty spin. I just didn't see much
All right,
substance there.
so both of you aren't buying it. All right, head over to Facebook and Twitter and sound off on a question as to whether or not the Democratic Party is going to regret running away from the president as they have throughout this whole election cycle. All right. Now, again, a programming note for you. Please tune in this Friday night at 6 p.m. We got an election preview. Dominic, Andrew, and I are going to sit down with our friends over at Capitol, including Ozzy Pepara and Jimmy Vielkind here. These guys cover the state as well as everybody. We'll talk about both statewide and city races. Again, that's coming up Friday. And don't miss our live election night coverage Tuesday. This coming Tuesday, November 4th, wall-to-wall, starting at 8 p.m. We'll do our regular RFL show at 6. All right, when we come back, though, we switch gears. The debate over guns that ignited following the tragedy at Newtown has taken a backseat to other issues like Ebola, ISIS during this election cycle. However, some lawmakers are diving back into the debate, and new campaign ads are out that are raising eyebrows. We'll show them to you, and we'll get the table's reaction as well.